Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will preside over this morning's zoning case. The case is DCI 2023-00042. The case name is Linton Road RPD. All testimony and evidence that I accept during these hearings are taken in under oath. Therefore, if you intend on speaking on the record, I ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. This is the first of 2 hearings on this matter. I will accept testimony and evidence, and I will prepare a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, who are the final decision makers. That hearing will follow this hearing anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks after I issue my recommendation. If you would like an opportunity to address the elected officials, you must participate on the record in this hearing today. The order of the proceedings, for those of you who may not be familiar, is first we will hear from the property owners' representatives. They will present the case. Their presentation may involve testimony from more than one witness. Some may be expert witnesses in a specific field of study. Following their presentation, the county planner that prepared the staff report will also make a presentation. The staff report is a public record, and the recommendation is one of approval from county staff. Following county staff's presentation, I may have some questions of the parties, and then we will turn to members of the public that have come to participate in the hearing. I will call your names one at a time if you filled out one of those public participation forms. At that time, please come to the podium. We will put an aerial photograph up on the screen, and you can show us in general terms where you reside, and we ask that you please share any concerns you may have with regard to the project. My experience during these hearings is oftentimes surrounding property owners are not completely in favor or totally against a project, but they have very specific concerns. If you share them with us, you allow an opportunity for clarification or for us to consider conditions that might address those concerns. I don't believe I have anything else to say, so I'm ready to begin.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Chastain. I am a certified planner from Bowman Consulting Group. I have physical copies of things to hand out to you all, so is it okay if I do that now?
Yes, please do.
Copy of our presentation.
This is a paper copy of your PowerPoint.
Yes.
This will be applicant exhibit 2. Applicant exhibit 1 was their 48-hour letter that came in the other day.
And then I have the 48-hour letter and the exhibits listed in there, the paper copies of those
Okay,
exhibits.
I'll take that with exhibits. That'll be exhibit 1.
Do you want it all together?
Yeah, it's a composite exhibit.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I have additional exhibit that I omitted from the 48-hour letter, so I apologize. But I have a revised schedule of deviations. We'll get into it during the presentation.
All right. That will be applicant exhibit 3.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the master concept plan that was submitted with the 48-hour letter. Can you confirm that this is an updated master concept plan with a new date, or does it reflect the same date in the staff report?
That's an updated with the new date. Part of deviation 5, which we'll present in here, we adjusted the maintenance easement along the canal, so it's shown on there in the width that we're requesting in the deviation.
Okay, I'll let you just proceed with your presentation then,
Okay.
and we'll go from there. I just want to alert my staff to replace the master concept plan.
So again, my name is Jeremy Chastain. I am a certified planner from Bowman. I have been qualified as an expert witness in land use, zoning matters, the comprehensive plan, the Lee County LDC, and the hearing examiner's office has my resume on file. With me today, I have Charlie Krebs, who's the professional engineer for the project from Bowman, Amy Thibault, our land use attorney from Rutzel and Andrus, Serena Cantu from Hans Wilson and Associates. She's our environmental consultant, and they also designed the wet slips that we're proposing. And then Yuri Baikal, a professional engineer from TR Transportation Consultants. Yuri is our transportation expert. And so the subject property is to the south of the Caloosahatchee, north of Linton Road, in the area that's outlined in red. And it's currently developed with 2 single-family homes and an accessory boathouse and 4 wet slips. As you can see, the surrounding area is mostly developed with single-family homes and accessory wet slips as well. So the subject property and the surrounding area are designated suburban on the future land use map. This category is characterized as predominantly residential areas with a standard density range of 1 dwelling unit per acre to 6 dwelling units per acre. The existing zoning on the site is Ag 2 and RS1. The surrounding zoning also consists of Ag 2 and RS1. And then to the south is the Riverview Lakes RPD. So this is a request to rezone about 6.18 acres from RS1 and Ag 2 to a residential planned development to allow for a maximum of 12 single-family detached dwelling units and typical residential accessory uses, and up to 14 wet slips accessory to the proposed dwelling units. Those wet slips are not open to the public. And as you'll see when we get to the schedule of uses, there's no boat wrap permitted either. So they are fully accessory to the proposed dwelling units. So this is the most recent version of the master concept plan. As you can see, there's 2 preserve areas. There's a preserve along the Caloosahatchee, and then there is a smaller preserve along the canal. We added that preserve at the request of one of the reviewing entities. I believe it was South Florida Water Management District.
Where's the
Hi, Charlie.
preserve alongside the canal? I don't
It's very small, but we got requested to preserve this portion of the mangroves, and so we did that. And then the larger preserve is up in the north. The area hatched in blue, that's where the excavation will be for the proposed wet slips. There's 2 existing homes along the Caloosahatchee. That's where the areas hatched in gray are. When this comes in for DO, those homes, the lots will be made to meet the development standards we're proposing. The existing wet slips are right here, and then this is the existing boathouse, and there's 2 wet slips with that. And then there was a dock with 2 slips existing right here, but we're also going through the permitting process for those as well.
You're going to what?
They're going through the permitting process for those. I'm not sure if those were those ever permitted in the past? Okay.
So they are included in the slip total, is
Right.
what you're saying?
Yes. So the new slips are in the area marked blue.
And that's going to require dredging to create?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those are not existing right now. So you can see that would be right about here. Within Tract R, residential, the proposed uses are all just standard to single-family residential development. They're single-family dwelling units, limited to 12 dwelling units within the RPD. Essential services, excavation, fences, walls, model homes, parking lot. We were required to provide a parking spot for the proposed wet slips, signs, and then the temporary uses that would be necessary during the construction process. And then within Tract A, amenity, that's where the wet slips will be located. There will be stormwater management located there. There's a single loading parking spot for the residents to use when they need to load their boats to go out. And there, we just permit the typical amenity center uses, administrative office if necessary, community gardens, essential services, fences, walls, parking lot. And then
So
we have,
there's no boat ramp proposed. How are they gonna get their boats into the water?
they have to drive a boat? They have to drive the boats to the slips and then park them in their slips.
From a boat ramp somewhere else?
Yes, yes. And then within the preserve tracts, again, this is just typical what's found in the LDC. The permitted uses are recreational facilities, passive and active recreational uses, such as hiking, nature trails, boardwalks. This will likely be boardwalks, if anything, since the preserve areas are so small. This is the proposed property development regulations. These are very similar to the underlying zoning district of RS1. So we have a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet, a minimum lot width of 100 feet, a minimum lot depth of 75 feet. The front yard measured from the internal drive, which is that cul-de-sac that was running through the middle of the project, is 20 feet for front loading garages to be able to accommodate parking in front of the garage, and then 12 feet for side loading garages. The front yard setback to Linton Road is 10 feet. The front yard setback to Cove Lane, which is the driveway serving the property to the west. There's 3 properties off of that. That setback is also 10 feet.
So how is that a front yard setback if that runs along the backside of the subdivision?
So the county considers that a right-of-way, and so any setback to a right-of-way is a front yard.
Okay.
So that's, sorry, that'll be right here. And so I think it's dated about here, and it serves the lots back here. And so we had changes to deviation 5. In the staff report, deviation 5 had a recommendation of denial. We were previously requesting to allow for the maintenance easements required along the canal to be within the platted single-family lots. LDC section 10-328A requires that those maintenance easements be outside of the lots. And so we've revised this deviation. So the required easement is 20 feet wide. And so instead we'll provide the easement along one side of the canal in accordance with LDC section 328A. But we're requesting a reduction in width to 12 feet wide for the maintenance easement. The canal is not a navigation thoroughfare. None of the seawall repairs will be done landward. It'll all be done from within the water, within the canal. And, you know, if the canal is blocked, the HOA, it's the intent for the HOA to manage the wet slips and the maintenance easement. So they'll let the residents know if work is being done and the canal won't be accessible during that time. And that's all really to the benefit of the residents, because I'm assuming they're the ones who need the seawall repairs.
And what's staff's recommendation on this proposed revision? Do you know yet?
We had a meeting previously and they supported it. I don't want to speak for staff though.
Okay, well, he'll cover it in his.
Yeah, sorry. And so with that, I'd like to bring up Serena to just discuss the environmental aspects and the dock.
Hi there, my name is Serena Cantu. I'm the environmental scientist at Hans Wilson and Associates. So right here we have an aerial image of the historic canal limits in this area. You can see that in 1996 and 1958, these canals were dredged to a certain depth. We don't know the exact depth. Oh, right.
Apologies.
Sorry. I would like to be qualified as an expert witness.
Will you please run through your educational and work experience?
Yes, I got my degree from Florida Gulf Coast University in environmental studies, and I've been in the environmental consulting field for the past 5 years. I've been with Hans Wilson and Associates for about 1 year now. And I mainly focus in all the environmental aspects of permitting when it comes to listed species surveys, benthic habitat, submerged aquatic vegetation surveys is essentially what I deal with the most at HWA, all the environmental aspects.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay. So the exhibit on the left is a flux and soils map. This documents existing conditions prior to development. As Jeremy stated earlier, there are some preserves that are going to be kept on site that consist mostly of red mangrove. The area that is proposed to be impacted consists of herbaceous wetlands. And all of these impacts have been mitigated for through state and federal permitting, through the Water Management District and through the Army Corps of Engineers.
And was that with purchase of mitigation credits?
Yes, correct. So the applicant purchased 0.05, I believe, herbaceous credits and 0.08. I would have to actually look in the permit. But all of these proposed impacts have been mitigated for. The purchase of forested saltwater credits and herbaceous saltwater credits through Little Pine Island Mitigation Bank. Let's see. The exhibit on the right is outlining the impacts. So on the south, they are proposing a retaining wall landward of the mangroves, which preserves most of the wetlands in that south portion. The impacts there are mostly for herbaceous wetlands. To the north, where the marina basin will be, are mostly also herbaceous wetlands that were impacted, and some forested wetland credits. And any trimming to mangroves will follow the the DEP mangrove trimming guidelines.
And there's mangroves there at the north end and also at the south end.
Correct. All right, so this zoom in details a little bit more about the impacts. As you can see, there is a seawall proposed in this northern portion. Dredging will occur to allow for the installation of the seawall. Proposed impacts to mangroves at this location is about 750 square feet. And it is going to be about 141 linear feet of seawall. By incorporating this seawall, it does allow for better tidal exchange for the existing wetlands, and there's a canal west of this as well that exists, right where that dock A is. So it'll allow for better tidal exchange. It'll also improve flushing conditions within the canal. So these are some cross sections of the proposed impacts. Cross-section AA will show the proposed dredging, and that is the existing seawalls that are currently on site. Cross-section BB is where the marina will go. The wetland jurisdictional line is about where the mangroves are, and the mangroves will be trimmed for alignment in this location. As I mentioned earlier, for the marina basin, most of the wetland impacts in this location were for herbaceous wetlands ground cover. Cross-section CC shows another view of the proposed docks. Let's see, the existing mean high water line, and then they're also proposing some reef balls just underneath the proposed seawall that will create some benthic habitat and improve water quality conditions overall. Let's see. And then cross-section AA is another view of the proposed marina basin. So as you can see, most of the impacts are for herbaceous wetlands, and minimal trimming to the existing mangroves will occur. Cross-section DD is for the southern portion of mangroves. These will be impacted slightly for the proposed retaining wall, which will be placed landward of the existing mangroves. So instead of placing it seaward of them and taking them all out, It does reduce impacts by placing them landward. Let's see. Okay, and I think that's it.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Chastain, certified planner from Bowman. The criteria for approval for rezonings, the proposed RPD complies with the goals, objectives, and policies of the LEAD plan. It meets the land development code and other applicable county regulations, or qualifies for deviations where necessary to improve the RPD. It's compatible with the existing and planned land uses in the surrounding area. This is single-family development. It's surrounded by single-family development. It'll have accessory wet slips. The surrounding single-family development has accessory wet slips. It provides access sufficient to support the proposed development intensity. The expected impacts on the transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and the conditions of approval, but we don't see any significant impacts. This will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive natural resources and will be served by urban services as defined in the LEAD plan. And the criteria of approval specifically for plan development rezonings. Again, the proposed mix of uses is appropriate at the proposed location. The recommended conditions by staff provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest and are reasonable related to the impacts on the public interest. And the deviation requested enhances the plan development and will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding area.
All right, are you gonna have your engineer testify regarding the stormwater management for the site? Because I would like to hear that.
Yeah, we can have our engineer come up. Charlie?
For the record, my name is Charlie Krebs. I'm a professional engineer. I've been deemed an expert witness in past cases, and I'm the Director of Engineering for the Fort Myers office for Bowman.
Please proceed.
So the stormwater management plan, which one is the pointer? Or is
the
there
two
point?
arrows. Left goes back, right goes forward.
No, no, the point.
Oh, is it? I don't think there's
The
a
light.
pointer
Oh.
on that, yeah.
Oh, okay. So the stormwater management plan is such that, as Jeremy was saying, tract A is our water management tract as well. The runoff from the lots goes into the roadway. The roadway then directs the water towards tract A where it is treated. And because we're in a coastal area, we do not have to provide attenuation per the South Florida Water Management District Code. And then once the water is treated, we discharge that water into the roadside swales for Linton Road, using the swale to provide additional treatment through just the absorption because it's a grass swale before it discharges to the end of the road where it goes into the Estero River, or sorry, Clusachy River.
Okay, can you come to the map and show me exactly how it's all gonna go?
So the runoff runs up into tract A. When
Right.
tract A gets treated, comes back down through the road to an outlet that is right here. And from here, it follows the roadside swale down to the end of the road where it goes into the Clusachy River. We have already been issued our South Florida Water Management permit for the site. So South Florida has reviewed it, said it meets with all of their permitting criteria, has issued the permit. That is why we've already mitigated for the wetlands impacts that are on the site as well.
All right, now the development on the right side of the large canal,
Over here.
yeah, how is that?
This is all existing single-family home. We're not proposing any changes over in this home site. But because this was part of the overall legal description, we included this in the application per staff's request.
So for all relevant issues, that's really treated as a separate
Single-family home.
project,
Correct.
and the focus is all on,
Is all on these parcels right here. So the South Florida permit, when we came in, is all on these parcels right here, and the boat slips, and obviously their access through that canal. But there are no proposed changes over here, but the access easement that we're talking about for the canal maintenance is on this side of the canal.
and is this boathouse part of the the southern, or whatever direction that is, western section, or is that
This
just?
boathouse is on this residential tract here and is for the sole use for these residents,
All right.
along with the 2 slips that are out here on this existing dock.
Okay. thank
All
you.
of this was existing, and again, because the legal description crossed over to this side, staff asked us to include everything, the rezoning. But this area over here, we're proposing no changes other than that access easement that they required. Everything else is gonna be developed over here.
All right. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeremy Chastain, certified planner for Bowman.
And I would like someone to walk me through the buffers surrounding the property, if any. I know the code doesn't
Yeah.
require them, but if you could just explain to me what is proposed.
And you so like you said, there's no buffers required, but we are providing a buffer along Cove Lane. Due to the scale of the master plan, it's kind of hard to see, but it's where this dashed line is. It goes up, it buffers the adjacent lots to the right of way because it's within 125 feet. And so we proposed a 5-foot wide type A buffer, and staff supported that.
Anything further?
No, those are the only buffers proposed. And then, yes, we have more for the presentation. Okay. And so the project's consistent with the LEED plan, policy 1.1.5. The suburban future land use category, the proposed uses and density of about 1.94 dwelling units per acre are consistent with the suburban future land use category. The standard density range is 1 dwelling unit per acre to 6 dwelling units per acre. So this is near the low end of that density range. The project's consistent with policy 2.1.1. It's surrounded by existing development. So this would eventually be infill development. It's consistent with policy 2.2.1. The subject property is located within a 5-mile radius of emergency services, and central water and sewer is available to serve the project. We are consistent with 4.1.1 and 4.1.2. Again, central water and sewer is available to serve the project. Standard 4.1.3. There's no reuse infrastructure to connect to within a quarter mile. And then standard 4.1.4. As Serena discussed, we have portions of the mangrove swamp within preservation areas, and then we've mitigated for the wetlands impacts.
And was the testimony that you already have your ERP permit?
Charlie's going to come up.
Yes, we do have our ERP permit already from South Florida Water Management District.
Thank you.
For the record, that was Charlie Krebs. We are consistent with policy 5.1.1. The entitlements are being sought through a plan development in accordance with this policy. Policy 5.1.2. The RPD is designed in conditions, helps mitigate the constraints of being within the coastal high hazard area. Policy 5.1.7. The proposed amenities are related to and easily accessible from the proposed single-family dwelling units. There will be sidewalks along that internal roadway that will connect all of the dwelling units to the amenity area. As Charlie discussed, the stormwater management systems were designed in accordance with these policies and have met all applicable state and local standards. and they will do so when we go in for DO with the Lee County standards. We are consistent with Goal 77, so Policy 77.3.1. Again, the RPD is proposing 2 native vegetation preservation areas totaling about 0.44 acre. 77.3.2. The proposed preservation areas are adequate in size to allow for the viability of the preserved native vegetation. Policy 77.3.3. Existing vegetation along existing and proposed right-of-ways will be retained where feasible. Policy 77.3.4. Although there's no open space requirement for the proposed development, the RPD is proposing 2 preservation areas in accordance with this policy. Policy 77.3.5. As Serena's discussed, an assessment of the existing native vegetation has been provided. And again, we have the 2 preservation areas shown on the master concept plan. Consistency with Goal 101 and its various objectives and policies. The development is proposed mostly on the upland portions of the sites. Again, we have the 2 preservation areas, one of which is located adjacent to the Caloosahatchee. That'll provide habitat and defense against coastal flooding. And as Charlie discussed, the stormwater management system has been designed to take the project's proximity to the Caloosahatchee River in mind, consistent with the goal and the related objectives and policies. Policy 124.1.1. Again, we have the 2 preserve areas. We have existing wetlands on site within one of those preserve areas along the Caloosahatchee, and the development in those areas is limited to passive and active recreational uses, such as nature trails, boardwalks, or an observation deck. And then the wetlands impacts have been mitigated as part of the permitting process already. Goal 125, water quality. Again, the water management systems have been designed in accordance with these policies and have met applicable state and local standards and will meet the applicable standards of Lee County during the development order process. Goal 128, shoreline management. The proposed wet slips have been designed in accordance with these policies, are consistent with the Manatee Protection Plan, and again, will meet all applicable state and local standards during the DO process. We have a staff recommendation of approval subject to the conditions and deviations within the staff report. Other than some requests to tighten up the language of a couple of the conditions, we're okay with the intent of the conditions, and we had no changes to anything. It's my professional planning opinion that the proposed rezoning has met all the applicable standards and is consistent with the Lee County Land Development Code, public hearing considerations, and generally accepted planning principles, is compatible with adjacent land uses, and has provided the necessary record that entitles its approval. And with that, we'd like to open it up for questions.
Has the Division of Natural Resources approved the number of wet slips you've proposed for this project?
You can come up, Serena.
So as far as the Division of Natural Resources, I believe that was considered during permitting prior to submitting to the state. We do typically obtain some sort of local approval on the county level where they will get eyes on the site and be able to provide comment.
Well, I was confused by one of the proposed conditions that seemed to make that ambiguous, that the slip number was going to be subject to compliance with the Manatee Protection Plan, and it was my understanding that that either already happened or maybe it didn't happen at the time the staff report was published, but maybe has happened.
I don't know the exact answer to that question.
Other than the maximum slips will be 12, and it still may be subject to modification downward based on Department of Natural Resources review.
I guess,
Yeah, so I can try and help a little bit. Jeremy Chastain, a professional planner from Bowman. I'll do my best. I'm not an environmental scientist. But during the rezoning, we did reach out in terms of the manatee protection plan, just to confirm that we're consistent with the manatee protection plan in the amount of slips we're proposing. I think that's
Right, we do
very
get-
early on during the zoning, so it's not specific details yet, right?
correct, it's based on the linear footage of shoreline. So the county will, through the manatee protection plan, will tell you how many slips you're allowed for the site.
And did that occur?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have further questions at this time. I'd like to hear the staff's presentation and testimony of the public, and then there may be questions.
Thank you.
Staff would like to submit the presentation as well as staff's conditions as written prior to any changes to site plans,
Staff's conditions as what?
as they were originally written.
Okay, so these don't reflect changes.
No, ma'am.
So this is the same conditions that are in your staff report?
Yes.
Okay. Staff report is Staff Exhibit 1. The 48-hour letter is Staff Exhibit 2. The PowerPoint is Staff Exhibit 3. And the duplicate condition submittal is Staff Exhibit 4.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, my name is Cam Mohammed. I am a planner with the zoning section of Lee County Community Development. I have been accepted as a witness, an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan, and the hearing examiner's office has my resume on file. The case we're hearing this morning is DCI 2023-00042, Linton Road, RPD. So the applicant's request is to rezone approximately 6.18 acres from residential single-family, RS1, and agricultural, AG2, to residential planned development, RPD, to allow up to 12 single-family dwelling units and accessory uses, including up to 14 private wet slips. Property information: the property is comprised of two parcels, 13150 and 13120/130 Linton Road. The property's total acreage is approximately 6.1 acres. Property is located in the suburban future land use category. The property is within the Iona-McGregor Planning District, and its current zoning of RS1 and AG2 are its original zoning designations. The parcel's history. There are 4 existing buildings on the property, 2 single-family residences, a garage, as well as a boathouse, all identified with arrows. The properties have not been subject to any zoning actions prior to this request. These images depict the future land use category of suburban, as well as the current zoning, a combination between RS1 and AG2. The surrounding properties, to the north is the Caloosahatchee River, noted as agricultural AG2. To the south is the residential planned development. To the east, a property zoned agricultural AG2. To the west, a parcel zoned residential single family RS1. This application was reviewed in accordance with LDC section 34145, subsection D4A1, zoning matters. Throughout my presentation, I will be demonstrating the compliance with these specific review criteria. In addition to the prior sections of the Land Development Code section 34145, subsection D4A2 for planned development rezonings also provides review criteria, and those will also be analyzed. Zoning review criteria A complies with the Lee Plan. My following slides will go through the analysis of compliance. The property is located within the suburban future land use category, which is identified in the Lee Plan as policy 1.1.5. The Lee Plan states that this category can be best categorized as predominantly residential areas that are either on the fringe of the central urban or urban community future land use categories, or in areas where it is appropriate to protect existing or emerging residential neighborhoods. Lee Plan Growth Management, Goal 2, Objective 2.1. Growth management is in order to coordinate the location and timing of new development within the provision of infrastructure by government agencies, private utilities, and other sources. Objective 2.1 of the Lee Plan promotes contiguous and compact growth to contain urban sprawl. As we've seen, this area is already settled with many residential uses between the two predominant zoning districts, RS1 as well as agricultural AG2. Lee Plan Growth Management continued, Policy 2.1.1 and Policy 2.2.1. So most residential, commercial, industrial, and public development is expected to occur within the designated future urban areas on the future land use map through the assignment of very low densities to the non-urban categories. As the property is within the suburban future land use, that density, the allowable density range is from minimum of 1 dwelling unit per acre to 6 dwelling units per acre. As the applicant stated, the proposed density at the site is fairly low in compliance with these standards. Lee Plan Water and Sewer, Standards 4.1.1, Standard 4.1.2 speak to the requirements for properties to receive either public water or public sewer, depending on the impact they would have to those infrastructure systems. The applicant has provided a letter of availability from county utilities stating that the subject properties are located within the Lee County Utilities Future Service Area as depicted on maps 4A and 4B of the Lee County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, fulfilling requirements for both of these standards. Water and sewer continued, Standard 4.1.3 and Standard 4.1.4. Reuse. Any development that requires a development order on a property that is adjacent to public reuse infrastructure with sufficient capacity must connect to that reuse system for irrigation needs. Based on the provided letter of availability, there was no mention of any reuse availability. Standard 4.1.4, the subject property is within the coastal high hazard area. There are 3 existing buildings. At some point, 1 building is proposed to be removed on the property, which will remain. The site consists of residential, mangrove swamp, and wetland scrubs. Portions of mangrove swamp and wetland scrubs will be preserved. Specifically, the applicant states that they are proposing as amended 0.44 acres of natural vegetation in the northern and southern portions of the project. Lee Plan Residential Land Uses, Goal 5 is to accommodate the projected population of Lee County in the year 2045 in appropriate locations. Standard 5.1.1, all development approvals for residential, commercial, and industrial uses must be consistent with further policies and standards under Goal 4. Goal 5, essentially the medium density kind of fits into the overall aspect of providing and locating individuals throughout the year 2045. Policy 5.1.1 states that residential developments requiring rezoning and meeting the development of county impact thresholds must be developed as planned developments, as this request is proposed to be. Residential land uses continued, Policy 5.1.2, prohibits residential development where physical constraints or hazards exist or require the density and design to be adjusted accordingly. Through this policy, being that the property is within the coastal high hazard area, staff is recommending conditions to mitigate the site constraints of the subject property, being that it's within the coastal high hazard area. Policy 5.1.7 seeks to maintain development regulations that require that community facilities such as parks, recreational, and open space areas in residential developments are functionally related to all dwelling units and easily accessible via pedestrian and bicycle pathways. Essentially, all of the on-site passive recreation facilities are intended to support the residential uses. Lead Plan Natural Systems and Surface Water Management, Objective 60.4, incorporate natural systems into surface water management systems to improve water quality, air quality, water recharge, infiltration, water storage, wildlife habitat, recreational opportunities, as well as visual relief. As mentioned, there are areas that are going to be maintained for these, as well as the applicant's proposed surface water management plan and the ways that they are planning to direct the water as well. Natural systems and surface water management continued. Policy 61.3.6 requires developments to provide surface water management systems, acceptable programs for operation and maintenance, and post-development runoff conditions that reflect the natural surface water flow rate, direction, quality, hydro period, and drainage basin. Policy 61.3.8, the banks of wet retention and detention areas must be sloped to promote growth and vegetation and safeguard against accidents. Both of these have been addressed through the applicant's proposed stormwater management system. Policy 61.3.11, runoff must be routed through retention or detention areas and vegetated swales in order to reduce flow velocity, allow for percolation, and trap and remove suspended solids and pollutants. Policy 61.3.12, the design of shorelines of retention and detention areas and other excavations must be sinuous rather than straight. Based on the applicant's engineer's testimony, I feel as if these policies have been addressed. Lead plan development design requirements, policy 77.3.1. Any new development with existing indigenous vegetation is encouraged to provide half of the required open space as existing native plant communities. Policy 77.3.2, open space areas must be designed with adequate widths to preserve and allow the continued growth and viability of existing native trees. Policy 77.3.3, county encourages new developments to incorporate existing native plant communities and or native trees along proposed and or existing rights of way. As the applicant has stated, the proposed preserve areas encompass the footprint of the existing native vegetation areas and will provide adequate widths to allow for the continued growth and viability of those existing native trees. Policy 77.3.4, the county encourages new developments to incorporate large contiguous open space areas in the development design. Policy 77.3.5, proposed planned developments must submit an open space design plan with an assessment of the existing native plant communities and native trees. The open space design plan must delineate the indigenous preserves and or native tree preservation areas. There are no open space requirements for the residential single-family zoned properties with a minimum lot size of 6,500 square feet. And that's based on LDC section 10415A. The applicant has proposed preserve areas provided for approximately 0.44 acres of open space. The applicant has also provided an assessment of the existing native plant communities and trees, and the proposed MCP delineates all preservation areas. Lead plan coastal areas. Goal 101, protect human life along with current and future development from the impacts of coastal flooding. Coastal flooding includes but is not limited to high tide events, storm surge, flash floods, stormwater runoff, and impacts of sea level rise. Objective 101.1, coastal area planning, improve the function of natural systems as a defense against coastal flooding. As the applicant has stated through their testimony of the engineer and their stormwater systems, I don't see much of a inherent risk here based on that design. Policy 101.1.1 requires that development within the coastal high hazard area be compatible with natural systems such as water retention and purification, wildlife habitat, primary productivity, and defense against coastal flooding. Objective 101.3, development in coastal areas, protect human life and property from natural and man-made disasters. Policy 101.3.2, restrict development in the coastal high hazard area to uplands except as needed for the provision of public facilities. The applicant is proposing a development that is restricted to the upland portion of the site in accordance with the aforementioned goals and objectives. Lead Plan Wetlands. Goal 124, wetlands, to maintain and enforce a regulatory program for development in wetlands that is cost-effective, complements federal and state permitting processes, and protects the fragile ecological characteristics of wetland systems. Policy 124.1.1, ensure that development in wetlands is limited to very low density residential uses and uses of a recreational, open space, or conservation nature that are compatible with wetland functions. The applicant states that most of the existing wetlands on the site are within the proposed preservation areas and that there is no development proposed within these areas. Water quality and water resources. Policy 125.1.2. New development and additions to existing development must not degrade surface and groundwater quality. Policy 125.1.3. The design, construction, and maintenance of artificial drainage systems must provide for retention or detention areas and vegetated swale systems that minimize nutrient loading and pollution of freshwater and estuarine systems. Policy 126.1.4. Development designs must provide for maintaining or improving surface water flows, groundwater levels, and lake levels at or above existing conditions. The proposed drainage systems will provide for retention or detention areas and will not degrade surface and groundwater quality as per the applicant's testimony. The applicant states that the proposed water management system will be designed to meet all applicable county and state standards and will maintain or improve surface water flows, groundwater levels, and lake levels. Lead Plan Shoreline Management. Goal 128, shoreline management, to encourage the maintenance and development of water-dependent shoreline uses and to avoid their displacement by non-water dependent uses. Objective 128.4, marine facilities, siting criteria. The county will consider certain criteria in evaluating requests for new and expanded marinas, other wet slip facilities, dry slip facilities with launches, and boat ramps in order to make efficient use of limited shoreline locations and to minimize environmental impacts. So based on applicant's testimony, there is no negative impact to the shoreline. As they mentioned, the seawalls are proposed to be on the upland area within those mangrove areas along the shoreline. So I don't see any non-compliance with those goals or objectives. Shoreline management continued. Policy 128.4.1, proposed boat access facilities and expansion of existing facilities. Policy 128.4.5, new boat access facilities must be designed to avoid erosion on adjacent shorelines. The proposed design includes a submerged seawall to allow for tidal exchange with adjacent mangrove wetlands and reef walls to address wave attenuation. In addition, the community boat access facility is located on a privately owned canal, and vessels operating out of the private multi-slip docking facility will create minimal wake energy. And I find that design is consistent with these policies. Policy 128.4.6, proposed boat access facilities and expansion of existing facilities will be evaluated in accordance with the Lee County Manatee Protection Plan dated June 17, 2004, and approved by the Board of County Commissioners on June 29, 2004. Policy 128.4.7, boat access facilities, including multi-slip docking facilities and boat ramps, which would disturb or destroy wetlands or grass beds, must demonstrate a pressing need for the proposed facility and must provide for continued use by the general public. So these boat access facilities are proposed as private facilities to support the residential plan development, as well as providing some sort of recreational use for the residents as well. This site plan has since been updated. Policy 128.4.8, boat access facilities should be located in areas of maximum physical advantage. Adequate existing water depths between the proposed facility and any navigational channel, inlet, or deep water are preferred, as new dredging is discouraged. Policy 128.4.9, boat access facility locations should minimize natural shoreline disruption. And adequate existing water depths between the proposed facility and any navigational channel have been met. The applicant has stated that they will be performing maintenance dredging of the existing access channel to the previous permitted depths of -5 feet mean low water to restore adequate water depth to the existing marked channel. The applicant has not proposed any impacts to the natural shoreline associated with this development as proposed. Policy 128.4.10, boat access facility construction in dead-end canals is discouraged due to difficulty in meeting state water quality standards. The proposed access facility is designed to connect with the adjacent mangrove wetlands to allow for enhanced tidal exchange between the man-made canal system and the adjacent mangroves, preserving the water quality. Policy 128.4.11, proposed boat access facilities must demonstrate that the site has adequate uplands to provide support facilities for all activities proposed on site without damaging or removing wetlands or rare and unique upland systems. The applicant has stated that 9,264 or 62 square feet of impacts are anticipated on the property to accommodate the proposed boating access facility. Of those proposed impacts, 1,456 square feet are impacts on wetlands, which equates to about 16% of the total site impacts. The proposed impacts on the wetlands will allow for flushing between the adjacent mangroves and the proposed boat access facility, which staff finds to be a net benefit. Review criteria B, the request meets this code and other applicable county regulations or qualifies for deviations. The applicant has acknowledged that at the time of development, the Land Development Code and other applicable county regulations will apply. The applicant has also requested 6 deviations and has keyed these deviations to their master concept plan. Deviation 1 seeks relief from LDC section 34.935 subsection B1F, minimum setbacks of structures and buildings from perimeter boundaries, which requires that perimeter setbacks from roads, streets, or drives must meet the standards established in LDC section 34.2192, requiring a 25-foot setback to Cove Lane and Linton Road, to instead allow a minimum perimeter setback of 10 feet where the proposed development within tract R1 is adjacent to Cove Lane and Linton Road. Staff recommends approval for that deviation request. Deviation 2 seeks relief from LDC section 10291 subsection 3, required street access, which requires residential development of more than 5 acres to provide more than one means of ingress or egress for the development, to instead allow for one means of ingress or egress for the RPD. Staff recommends withdrawal based on the fact that the parcel to the east is its own separate residential parcel and is not technically a part of the development of this proposed RPD. Deviation 3 seeks relief from LDC section 10296 subsection B, right-of-way width, which requires a minimum right-of-way width of 40 feet for private two-way local streets with closed drainage or inverted crown to instead allow for a minimum right-of-way width of 35 feet for the private two-way local road with closed drainage or inverted crown. Staff recommends approval to that deviation request as well. Deviation 4 seeks relief from LDC section 10321C, crown elevation of local subdivision streets, which requires that the minimum elevation of the crown of local subdivision streets must be 5.5 feet above mean sea level, datum, to instead allow for a minimum crown elevation of 3.6 feet. Staff recommends approval for that deviation request. Deviation 5, as reviewed prior to any changes or any language updates, seeks relief from LDC section 10328A, open drainage easements, which requires that no portion of the required maintenance easement area be located within the limits of a platted single-family residential lot, to instead allow for a portion of the required maintenance easement area to be located within the limits of a platted single lot. Currently, staff recommends denial, but as the language for that deviation request has been since amended or changed, staff is in agreement with that deviation request and would
You concur with the modifications and now are recommending approval?
Yes, ma'am. Deviation 6 seeks relief from LDC Table 34-2020, subsection B, required parking spaces for non-residential uses, which requires that marinas and other water-oriented uses provide one parking space for every 2 slips, to instead allow for 1 marina loading or unloading space to serve the proposed multi-slip docking facility. And staff recommends approval for that deviation request as well. Is the request compatible with existing and planned uses in the surrounding area? The property is located within the suburban future land use category. The rezone request is compatible with surrounding land uses, as the proposed development consists of single-family detached dwelling units and accessory uses to support, much like the surrounding area. The requested rezoning will not result in the encroachment of uses that are potentially destructive to the character and integrity of the existing residential environment of the surrounding area. Does the request provide access sufficient to support the proposed development intensity? Access to the project is proposed to be 2 access points along Linton Road, 1 proposed cul-de-sac, and 1 existing driveway. The applicant has submitted a deviation request, but that deviation request was recommended to be withdrawn. Does the request expect impacts on transportation facilities, and will they be addressed by existing county regulations and conditions of approval? The proposed rezoning of the subject property on the north side of Linton Road will not cause the level of service on the adjacent roadway network to operate below the recommended minimum standards as identified in the county's comprehensive plan. The proposed use will generate approximately 11 trips in the AM peak hours and 14 trips in the PM peak hours. Since the project's trip generation is less than 100 trips per hour, no intersection level of service analysis would be required. Impacts to transportation facilities will be addressed by the existing county regulations and the required traffic impact statement during local development order review. Review criteria F. The request will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas and natural resources. At the time of development order, the applicant will be required to meet the LDC requirements or seek an amendment to the planned development as required by the LDC. Due to the wetland habitats on site, staff is recommending the following condition to ensure flood compensation for the future development. Prior to issuance of a local development order, the developer must provide calculations that quantify the flood storage volume provided by wetlands within the coastal high hazard area and demonstrate equal compensatory flood storage volume within the proposed development on the engineer plans. To ensure compliance with the Manatee Protection Plan, staff is also recommending the following condition. A maximum of 14 wet slips is permitted as an accessory use to residential single-family uses. This number may be modified based on the review and approval by Lee County for compliance with the Lee County Manatee Protection Plan.
Okay, so it's my understanding that that already occurred, so that condition really needs to be rewritten, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Review criteria G. The request will be served by public services defined in the Lee Plan if located in a future urban area category. The property is located within the suburban future land use category, which is a future suburban area, and the following urban services are available to serve the site. Public utilities, potable water, as well as sewer would be provided by Lee County Utilities. Emergency services could be provided by Iona McGregor Fire Station 72, which would be located approximately a mile from the subject site. Police protection will be provided by Lee County Sheriff Department Station located at 15650 Pine Ridge Road, approximately 3.9 miles away from the subject property. Public transit, there are no Lee Tran bus stops that are within a quarter mile of the subject property. Transportation, the proposed use will not negatively impact the surrounding roadway system. Conditions as written prior and may need some further clarification and or language modifications. Master concept plan, development of this project must be consistent with the master concept plan. Schedule of uses, development of this project must be consistent with the schedule of uses for tracks R, A, and P. Property development regulations, development of this project must be consistent with the development regulations proposed by the applicant, listed as attachment C to the staff report. Compensatory flood storage. Prior to the issuance of a development order, the MCP must show 22% open space, 0.29 acres as depicted, and that may have changed based on the applicant's changes to the master concept plan. So that condition most likely is going to need to be updated.
Which one is that?
The compensatory flood storage.
Right, okay, I have questions about that anyway, so.
Wet slips, maximum of 14 wet slips are permitted as accessory uses to the residential uses. Staff findings, the requested rezoning from residential single-family RS1 and agricultural AG2 to residential planned development is consistent with the Lee Plan and Land Development Code. The proposed rezoning provides consistency with allowable residential development within the suburban future land use category. Staff has concluded that the rezoning will not result in negative impacts to urban services, infrastructure, or surrounding property. The subject property is sufficiently served by fire, police, and emergency services personnel and other public services. The request will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas or natural resources. The proposed use is appropriate at the proposed location. The recommended conditions provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest and are reasonably related to the impacts on the public's interest expected from the proposed development. Deviations recommended for approval enhance the PD's objectives and protect public health, safety, and welfare. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the applicant's request.
Thank you, Cam, I have no questions of you. I can get Charlie back up here. I'm having difficulty understanding how Tract A is going to function. On the one hand, I see a sidewalk or mixed-use path to the boat docks, but I don't understand how it's going to serve as drainage. Is this going to be a grass detention area? Is this the area where the compensatory flood storage is going to occur? I have many questions.
It is a grass retention area. So this will all be an open space area. We do have a sidewalk that's going to provide access that'll cross over the detention areas. In the development order application, we're showing culverts that are underneath that that'll allow water to flow from one side of the detention area to the other side, but still allow access for people to walk to their boat slips. So this retention area, as well as the excavation area that we're providing for the boat slips, that would be what's going to be providing the additional storage to the site. As like I said, we do have the South Florida permit, and part of their review is to look at, are we impacting the historic storage on the site? And they did review it and determine that we're sufficient for what that requirement is.
Track day on either side of this walk path during rainy season will be essentially a lake, is that correct?
It won't be a lake. I mean, it'll fill up with water. This is gonna slide down. It'll fill up with water, and then there are control structures that'll allow that water to be regulated as far as what we're discharging onto Linton Road. And then on low flow areas where it's just low rain, that'll seep into the ground. May not always discharge out, but you're gonna get some ground infiltration as well as discharge through the storm system out onto Linton Road. And then, like I said, it follows Linton Road's swales down to the end where there's a control structure that discharges into the Caloosahatchee River.
When it rains, the water's gonna flow into this roadside swale and it's gonna head to A, correct?
Can we get it back up here? Is there a? Okay, so what we're in for development order right now. The residential areas are draining towards the roadway. There are roadway inlets that are located in the road and at the back of the cul-de-sac that collect that water and direct it to this tract A. And this portion right here is the swale, is that retention area. And it goes all the way down to here. And then there's a control structure that is located here that brings those inlets back down, and then there's a lot line somewhere in here that crosses back over and then discharges into Linton Road. So this is providing that water quality and treatment of that initial flush of the stormwater, and then it allows it to go out into Linton Road and then out into the Caloosahatchee River.
So this pipe or swale is gonna be sending water to A and from A?
Two different pipes. So we have a pipe that's going in that's discharging, like say over in this area. So we have the maximum distance from the control structure that brings it back down to another location.
Okay.
So we've got two pipes. We're not using the same pipe to collect and the same pipe to discharge. That would defeat the treatment portion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
No, I don't have any other questions. I'm gonna take a brief 5-minute break before I resume with public input, and we'll begin with public input. If we, in the meantime, can get an aerial photograph up on the screen, thank you.
If everybody could take their seats.
Okay, we're back on the record.
I understand.
I have 4 members of the public that have completed forms to speak. I'll take them one at a time. The first one is Alexander Brockmeyer.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine.
So, the first thing I'd like to present, I live in Calusa Creek, which is the community directly on the other side of Linton Road. And if I can approach, I'll tell you, I believe this is my house right here. So, and I have a letter from our condo, or homeowners association for president.
Are you speaking on their behalf?
I'm not, but Bruce Green, the president of the association, asked that I bring this and present it to you this morning. And so the individual concerns that I have are really twofold. One is at a more macro level, and I've spoken with Cam this morning about this. The area that we live in here at Linton Road, even John Morris, and if you even go down, I believe it's Allen Way there, none of those areas have sidewalks. Any given day during the peak times that Cam mentioned this morning, you can find 20, 30 people out there walking their dog. There are, again, no sidewalks. My concern is that when we're adding all this traffic coming in, that there's going to be safety issues with pedestrians. We may need to have that addressed down the road. Secondarily, though, particularly on Linton Road, that is a very narrow road. And I think that's where you see a lot of people walking on that back road. Accommodating a sidewalk there in conjunction with the swales that we've heard a lot of discussion about this morning. And specifically with that, the deviation request, I believe it's 1 and 5. If we take that deviation and permit a 10-foot setback, I have concerns about how the floodwater accommodations for this property are going to then work. Because on what we heard the engineer speak of this morning, how it's all going to flow from subpart A, go down into the swale on Linton Road, then kick over. It essentially is going to come out to right here. The other part of that drainage easement or drainage that we're talking about is right here on Cook Road. We're in dry season right now, and it looks like it does during normal rainy season. And I think the reason for that is because right here on Sandy K is a new Lennar development. They're adding a bunch of new homes in there. So and then they're developing new properties here, and I believe they're talking about putting new homes in here. So this and this, all this water that's supposed to be going out into the river is going to be stressed. And if we accept that deviation, I have concerns about that swale on Linton Road, its retention capacities being reduced, which is going to then overburden that swale, given that that overall system is already in a non-rainy season manner, already having standing water in it. And we're in, I believe, one of the worst droughts we've had in Southwest Florida in a long time. So if that's already got standing water in this type of drought, imagine what it's going to have in rainy season. And keep in mind, my community in Calusa Creek has, I believe my home got about 12 to 18 inches of water during Ian. Before Ian, I know people in Colonial Shores, which if you look at, this is Calusa Creek, you have Iona Road that runs in between Calusa Creek and Colonial Shores. Colonial Shores runs along this same, here's Cutter's Court, so this is Iona, this is Colonial Shores. It all feeds through, if you can go up this way, right here. This is where it feeds into that Cook Road drainage. Colonial Shores, the house isn't there, had 18 plus inches of water in their house during Ian from floodwaters. So the concern I have to your concerns that you've already expressed about flood issues and flood retention is that some of these deviations being requested is going to have an adverse effect on the water in this area, the flooding, and also on the surrounding areas that I don't have any personal knowledge of on Allen Way and those other typical ranch Florida homes that we have that are not elevated. And I think, as you may know, after Ian, we had a bunch of issues with our FEMA flood policies being back because of houses not being up to the current code for flood elevation. We get something like even less than Ian coming through again, we're going to be affecting hundreds of homes as a result of some of these deviations.
It sounds like you need to address the maintenance of that swale canal right away, because if you have water in it now, that means it's not being maintained.
Well, and
That,
I don't control
I'd
it.
get that done, I'd get that done before hurricane season.
Well, that's not my easement. It's the county's, but that's my concern. Secondarily, is as I noted where I live, when I talked to Cam originally, I called them and I said, hey, you guys aren't putting condos in here, right? That was my first concern, because I got a 4-year-old daughter and my wife, we're right there on the back of this property, or what's going to be this property line. It's like, we're not going to have people looking in our houses, right, in our backyards all the time. He said, no, they're not condos. And then I saw the deviation, how close it could get to Linton Road regardless, and that we're talking about 2-story homes. You're effectively going to have, one, two, about 7, 8 houses that are going to have people looking into their backyards on a daily basis. And so I think we have some privacy concerns there, both individually, and I know some of our other neighbors will be coming to speak with you about that this morning as well. And so I would submit to you that deviation 1 and deviation 5 ought to be denied, both from the flood perspective that I've addressed with you, as well as for deviation 1, the privacy concerns. And I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
David
Hill.
Nahila,
Hill.
thank you for coming, sir.
It's gonna be tough to follow a lawyer, they know what they're doing. I'm gonna shotgun this. Everything Alex said was just phenomenal. We also live on the back wall of Linton Road. Like I said, I will shotgun this. Let me start by saying there are 25,000 homes for sale in Lee County, from what I looked at yesterday from Realtors.com. They take about 85 days to sell. I heard some words like this was a very low density area. It's not going to be if we put 12 homes in there. Open space, that's pretty minimal open space with 12 homes in there. Not kind of what it was meant. The swale was cleaned out last year. I have video of them back there doing it. It's already full. They were back there sucking it out and had all their digging equipment out there and everything. So it's a constant issue. When this, on the setback that Alex already talked about beautifully, enhances the achievement of the objectives of the planned development, but not so much for the public, for us who live there, as he already so eloquently stated. I also heard something by the staff that said, based on the applicant's statements, it meets policy or something to that effect. Well, it has to be on the board, not the applicant's statements. It's on you guys to figure this out. The boat slips back there, I have a boat here. Punta Rasa means shallow point. Good luck getting boats out of there. I hope they're very low draft. It's extremely shallow. It's about 4 feet at low tide, 6 feet at high tide. It's tough. Shotgun, let me continue here. What else did I have on here? That variance from the 5.5 foot road crown to 3.5 foot I've talked to somebody that does subdivisions, didn't want to be here. That road's gonna be underwater quite a bit, no doubt about it. That's really low. So, and I just worry on Alex's point about the flooding. So we have water in our homes now. Will it be worse? And that swale back there is not continuous. I think some of it goes underground. It's not a continuous swale. And that has to be cleaned out regularly. And that's all I can think of. Alex did a fantastic job stating most of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Nahila?
Oh, she won't. That's my wife.
Okay. Karen Garvin.
Again, Alex did a great job, and my concern is, again, having somebody look over in my backyard. So if they're two-story homes and they're granting that variance where they are closer to the road, I'm gonna have somebody looking in my backyard the whole time. That's why we bought the place. It was private, quiet, and I'm afraid that's gonna end if that's.
Where do you live in relationship to the project?
I am. I think I'm this one or this one, right in the back. So right there. And that's just my concern. And the water issues too, of course.
All right.
Nobody wants their place flooded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public that didn't complete a public participation form that would like to speak?
Can I add a couple more things?
No, I only give it one time to speak, and then we get back to the parties. I'm back to the parties. There's a number of issues raised. If you want to send someone up to clarify.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Amy Thibault with Retzel. I am the land use attorney on this project. So first and foremost, I must put on the record that the standard here, the evidentiary standard, is competent substantial evidence. And so when we are talking about things that require expert testimony, such as drainage, compatibility with surrounding land uses, consistency with the Lee plan, per Catherine's Bay LLC v. Fagan, that testimony to be competent substantial evidence, that type of opinion testimony must come from an expert. And we've heard from the experts today, and they agree that the criteria for approval have been met. I won't beat a dead horse, but I will concur with you that a lot of the issues that have been brought up today are issues related to existing infrastructure that is not within the control of the applicant or the applicant's team. We've heard a lot about concerns about privacy issues. I should also reiterate some of what Jeremy talked about. We didn't explicitly discuss maximum heights, but we are not deviating from the maximum height permitted in RS1 or AG2. We are consistent with that. I believe it's 35 feet. So we are not actually changing the maximum permissible height as that site exists today. There was a comment about a surplus of homes for sale in the county. I will note that this is not relevant to this particular case based on the codified criteria in the Land Development Code. And I think that covers the overview of my portion of this rebuttal, but please let me know if you have any questions.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from your team that'll be speaking? No? Cam, do you have any concluding remarks you'd like to make?
No, ma'am.
No. If there's no further concluding remarks, I'm going to close the hearing. Thank you everyone for coming. All documents that were entered into the record were made exhibits. I will be working on my recommendation in this case, and hopefully it'll be released within the next week to 10 days. I do have a case ahead of this one I'm working on, so it might be a day or two before I get to this. I'll be asking for the transcript. This is also a public record. If somebody would like a copy of it, it'll be available to you. Once it's available to us, it'll be uploaded into the case file. If you need help retrieving that, please contact Cam, and he will assist you with that. If you filled out a public participation form, you will receive notification of the final board hearing on this case via the email that you provided. If you did not provide an email and you just provided your mailing address, you will receive further notices via mail. Thank you, everyone, for coming.